it's a fairly diverse panel. We've got two different federations.
A South African and Australian.
Hong Kong, yeah.
China mainland.
And Indian out of London and Singapore and the West Coast. Yeah, I think it's an interesting panel because we've got two federations who are probably at different sort of stages of their ascendancy in China and different kind of formats. Somebody who's worked from an apparel perspective, worked from an agency perspective, and is now working from a real estate venue location perspective, I guess. And Oscar, who's a founder, you're an entrepreneur, and you're very much on the media agency side, looking at activations of a lot of Western brands, European brands coming in and going out. Very good. I just want to try and kick off very broadly. In your experience, in the context of your businesses, how is engaging with the fan in China, how does it differ from engaging with the fan outside of China? Pick a country and then compare that to China and your experience. You want to kick us off, Matt?
It's super, super, super different, but you can say that from many countries in the world. So table tennis, key market is, of course, China. We're very popular in China, one of the key sports. So we take our China engagement to our fans very seriously. We have our complete own team doing all our fan engagement for our Chinese platforms. That's everything from WeChat to Weibo to Total to everything to do with China. So we have our own dedicated team in Shanghai that live and breathe our Chinese fan. It's the only country we do that for. Quite successful, over 3 million fans at the moment just for China. So we find the Chinese fans, they care about Chinese content. They don't really care about what Australian table tennis players doing or German or even Japanese. It's about China-focused content about Chinese players, their lifestyle, what they're eating, who they're dating, what car they're driving. So that's why we have our dedicated team, purely just looking at China, because that's all they care about is Chinese content.
So fundamentally hyper local talent-driven, editorialized outside of match day as well, depending on the platforms available. How is that different or similar for you?
It's exactly the same. The only difference is that we have an agency, a dedicated agency out of Beijing that does this for us. Exactly the same platforms. I think you better ask me the next question first, because the answers will be pretty similar. The Chinese market is unique. It's huge. It's badminton. It is our biggest market. The Chinese Badminton Association itself does an awful lot of work, but promotes very much at the elite level of the sport. Yep. So we focus on the rest as such in terms of social media approach, dedicated website, dedicated content that at times might mirror what we're doing elsewhere in the world, but in the main is dedicated to China.
Marcus, as somebody who sort of brought various different organizations, should I say, could be tennis events, agencies, brands into China, what's your take?
Yeah, so I mean, the tennis event that probably for those who are from this area would know quite well, the WTA finals now in Shenzhen for the next 10 years. So we are promoting it, and it's a little bit different because I guess from a sort of a federation's point of view, going to China versus us being in China, trying to do international event going outwards. Yeah, so it becomes us at least for the first year, it becomes a matter of how do we balance that local versus global? Because if for those who are in China knows that social media has a different landscape to the extent that your usual traditional international platforms are not widely available in China. So for us, obviously the local side of social media, the WeChat, the Weibo is very important, but I think that the key differences would be that the intensity of social media, particularly the platforms like WeChat, is just so strong because your life depends on it. Yeah. It runs basically everything you do in your life. You pay with it. If your phone goes dead without a battery, you are screwed. So to that extent, everything that we do, there's always, in a way, it's easier, but always is more connected for us to look at the payments, how to link it up to the payment system on every sort of aspect that we do, and also the fact that from a China's perspective, as Matt and Owen mentioned earlier, it's not just the sports side of it, but the peripheral lifestyle of a player, of what tennis does to you, what can benefit from tennis. These are the kind of things where we always look for as a talking point from our own feeds going out.
Almost seems to be the stuff outside, off the court, out of the match days, as much resonating with a much wider audience. Oscar, talk to us a bit about your business, the kind of clients you work with, and what are the kind of problems or challenges that you help them solve?
Yes, for example, when I start Hoopu Angle, which is the agency inside Hoopu 5 years ago, maybe only very few, very Chinese-focused big football clubs, for example, Arsenal, they already done some Chinese localized festival poster or campaigns, but you see right now for every Mid-Autumn Festival, every Chinese New Year, all the big football clubs is already posting a lot of very localized Chinese content. I think this is the trend you already said you have to care more about the Chinese audience, more localized content, or even right now the trends go further. For example, many NBA stars, when they come to China right now, David Wade, he enjoy going to having a Chinese style of massage and post on his Instagram. Just this morning, Tony Parker playing mahjong, which is 1,000 years of history Chinese traditional game. And this is how the trend go on, and I believe that it will still on and on because it's what Chinese audience want. It's about the Chinese culture. We need that care from the federation.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And in your experience, China's a large country. And like most large countries, you are attracted by the size of it. But like a lot of large countries, they are not necessarily homogenous. It's not just one country. Culturally, very different dialects, tonality, topics. How do you deal with that? Because I think you've got, especially for you guys, because you've got more than one tournament, different part of the country. What are the kind of, talk us through the kind of examples and approaches that you might adopt, which is not necessarily vanilla for everybody else?
It's an interesting approach for us because the Chinese Badminton Association is extremely powerful in China as a sports organization. Whenever we put out a series of events that we want people to bid for, especially our major events, the Sudirman Cup, the Thomas and Uber Cup, and our World Championships, the CBA come and say we want all of them for the next 5 years, which of course is unrealistic for us, but we then allow them to have a good pop at what happens in the calendar. What they then do internally is allow each of the regional cities to bid to them, over which we have no control. So that's a reflection in a way of what you're saying in terms of the regional differences, but also how they manage it.
Example, yeah.
But you're right to say that China is not just China. You know, it's a vast country. There are cultural differences within the country. There are language variations. You know, Paris and Amsterdam are as different, arguably, as Beijing to Shanghai. You know, and we have to manage this all the time.
And does that make it more complex in terms of getting your client across the line? There's also a degree of education for the client for you as well. The more the client is educated, the more you can help them reach their goals. But often educating a client is not that easy.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely China is a very big country, have very differences area from area. But I think from the hardcore fans who love this sport, or the most of the audience, they love this sport for the same reason. They are different people, they are from different area, but they also have so many similarity to join together. And if it is a good content, if it is a good production, I think it's good. It's good for everyone, not just for the young, say, generation. It's also good for all generation.
My question for you in that case, I guess, you have the fanatics, which is preaching to the choir. That's done. But if you look at growth, there's fanatics and the fan and the follower. Talk to us more about the messaging, the nature of the messaging, the nature of the editorial, and how does that vary to actually make it more inclusive? You talked about celebrity and lifestyle, but give us some specific examples of how you grow the game's awareness.
Yeah, well, China's also very different for table tennis. You have your fanatics, you have these crazy fan groups. So about 6 or 7 different players have fan groups with millions of fans in their group, even more followers to the fan groups than actually ITTF. So these people are having coordinated meetings, they go travel around the world, they organise, we work with them to give them signed equipment to barter off to raise money. We had our World Championships in Budapest this year, and it just so happened to be Liu Shiwen, a Chinese player who became world champion. The fan group paid whatever the amount of money is to completely brand a tram running around for 1 month around Budapest saying "Happy Birthday, Liu Shiwen" with her face on it. So things like that are super common.
So fans of a Chinese world champion collected money, that's one mechanism of digital, remitted that abroad, spoke to the Budapest Tourist Authority, whatever, and actually had that.
Yep, bought the branding of a tram for
celebrating
1 month.
Celebrating the athlete.
Yep, and then it's common for our top events that the organisers will be coming to us. Like we've just received a weird request from Ma Long's fan club. They want to buy 500 seats to put a banner on it for 1 week. Can we do that? So these people are complete fanatics, so it's about engaging them and speaking to them and amplifying their messages throughout our platform. So for the fanatic fans, it's quite easy because you just can connect directly to them. To get the casual fans, it's a little bit more difficult, of course, because we have massive CCTV broadcast in China. We have our World Championships that had over 400 million people watch over 60 hours live over 7 days. So that gets the casual fans, the people turning on their FTA and watching CCTV, but how do you get those people to then go, okay, I love table tennis that much, I'm going to go follow one of ITT's platforms, I'm going to go to their website, I'm going to see that there's going to be a China Open in 6 weeks, I'm going to buy a ticket, I'm going to be a fan, I'm going to be in the ecosystem. So that's about us and our internal messaging to try and convert these people into fans, which is not so easy, and normally the $1 million question of how you convert Chinese viewers into fans and then monetize them. But slowly getting them onto our platforms, which is good to see.
Marcus, you obviously work with two different agencies, a broadcaster, an apparel company, and then now an event promoter. Could you talk us through how it's changed in terms of engaging a fan in China? Because you've used different stakeholders for looking for different kind of values. So talk to us more about the how.
I mean, if you look at China, the past 20 years of China has gone through probably a
pace of change is varied
in most of the world. Yeah, so especially with this sort of development of the internet platform, social media platform, digital media side, I think that it's clearly the skew towards digital media or traditional media being consumed on screens.
Both.
Yeah, has gone completely skewed towards this now. I mean, your normal people watching a game on TV, the percentage of it, I don't have the exact number. I'm sure that Oscar have it. But at the same time, the pattern of consumption, I think you would find a lot less people now in their teens and 20s in China watching a whole game. So that consumption pattern of the content is becoming very different. A whole football game now is actually 2 minutes, 3 minutes. A whole match of a basketball NBA finals could be 5 minutes. So this is definitely changing the landscape in a big way. But going back to what Matt said earlier, if you look at from a tennis perspective, the WTA now has 7 tournaments in China across leading cities like Beijing or now in Shenzhen, to the extent of smaller places like Zhengzhou, where people not a lot maybe have heard of it. But that was the back end, I believe, of the rise of Li Na being a singles Grand Slam champion, and we've also got Grand Slam doubles winner of Zheng Jie and Yan Zi. So that has spurned this sort of a Yao Ming phenomenon as well. You look at it that way, and now for us, look at tennis. The facilities of tennis courts are still very much dominated by the coastal regions, so a little bit more affluent region, yeah.
Mainly female, largely screen female, or not?
No, I mean I think the sport from a kids' perspective, I think it's pretty widespread. Okay. Gemdale is lucky enough to actually run tennis schools and tennis clubs, so we have some figures on that. But unfortunately for all the panelists here being guys, the female athletes in China are the ones who actually does the good job. So there's still, right now there's still a top 12 player, Wang Qiang. We still have a couple of pairs of players in the doubles chasing into the WTA finals in Shenzhen at the end of the year. But that has also helped with the spread of the tournaments. And also with social media, it has spread the tennis message a lot better.
So what you're saying is mobile and connectivity has sort of changed the consumption of content from sort of broadcast to digital on the one hand, and then offline access to facilities and role models has sort of spawned an entire.
I mean, you still have. I mean, with these sort of more inner regions, tennis courts are being built, facilities are being built better, bigger tennis clubs are being built better. Us as a real estate developer, we're looking into developing more sort of tennis facilities in China as well. But overall, that sort of consumption of more available media on platforms, more events available across China. I mean, WTA is being very aggressive for mainland.
By design, over the last way. One question for you. Obviously, talking about the variety and the volume of the content, and especially the point around highlight clips. What does that mean for your business model in terms of media licensing, this whole reach, revenue, relevance? It's hard to square the circle, is it? Or
no, I mean,
creating more opportunities?
We still rely very much on a fairly traditional model of income to the federation in terms of linear television broadcast deals with CCTV, regional broadcasters, and now increasingly digital broadcasters. However, through our social media content provision, we have had to go short form, as short as 15 seconds, as long as, the statistics are saying that on YouTube people are consuming 6-7 minutes. Facebook is preferred at 3 minutes. We have to cut depending on how we do that. And each of the platforms in China operates slightly differently in terms of how that works. Just as a reflection of what Marcus said, I think we've just come out of a Sudirman Cup in May in Nanning. We are right now running this week a Super 1000 event in Chengdu, which is a $1 million prize money event, which is a big event for us in badminton, and we have 3 others in the calendar, spread around the country in the way that I described earlier, that CBA kind of manages with their relationships with the cities. But the formatting or reformatting of content is essential, and it's changing all the time. A year ago, Facebook consumers were, let's not use Facebook as the example, we're talking about China. Sina Weibo. The length of the clip is different now to what it was 3 years ago, which is very interesting. And a reflection of consumer behavior, which is on the change all the time.
Okay, I don't want to sort of put you in the spot because obviously it's confidential, but you're going through a new rights cycle from media tender. Could you talk us through, to the extent possible, what have been the conversations you've had internally in terms of how to best slice the media asset, which you need distribution for sponsorship, but you also need media from a licensing perspective. And then I'll probably come to you, Oscar, in terms of, I think it's easier in football, for clubs in particular, because you have the rights. And how's that different? So just curious to find out. Just a discussion fly on the wall.
Historically, ITTF in the past, we've given our sponsorship away to one agency, the media rights to another agency. We kept a little bit ourselves. So it's a clear message and direction internally that we need to have it all holistically linked. As you're right, we're going through our tender process to find our 2021 commercial partners, and it's been our clear message, it all needs to be linked, because as Owen's saying, the clips are getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and not necessarily you're going to make your money through Sina Weibo paying a rights fee for those clips. You're going to be associating those clips with a title sponsor or an event sponsor or even an external sponsor to be partnering with those clips. But then if you don't have those rights, you've given them away to another company, then you can't be having those 360 conversations with sponsors and even in cities looking for activation through your media rights. So we will be doing it much differently in the future for that reason.
And do you guys find the examples you give about the community-based or the sort of fan following of a particular star, the Budapest example you gave, is that very peculiar to China, very unique to China, or have you found that in other markets? I'm thinking Brazilian football, Indian cricket.
Yeah, I mean, just
it's quite phenomenal.
So the biggest fan followings in badminton of individual stars are Indian players and Chinese players, without doubt. But there's an interesting context to that. If we take Lin Dan, who is known to anyone in the badminton community and especially in China, multi-millionaire, superhero, poster boy, huge achiever in the sport. Outside of the sport and outside of Asia, unknown. Okay. The flip side of that is a current top 5 or 10 player out of Denmark, a guy called Victor Axelsen, Danish, fluent English, taught himself Mandarin, is now a superstar in China. The difficulty for the Chinese players is doing the crossover the other way because there are language frustrations or I don't want to say impediments because they're not stupid. They're just not taken through a system to help them understand that.
That's quite phenomenal.
And that's quite a challenge, actually.
That's a great segue, Oscar, because we began by saying a lot of what your agency's initial focus was to actually bring in Western, primarily European, primarily football-based brands in. But you've also spoken about taking a lot of Chinese brands out. Do you see a time when you may end up taking Chinese athletes out from a marketing perspective as an asset?
I think as sports are universal activities, the format is the same, the passion is the same. But I think it's bringing Chinese player going all over the world. I think it's quite difficult right now because maybe the player levels and maybe, as you say, the language, the Chinese person common characteristic, and also maybe is okay. China market is already big enough. If you want to develop, if you want to focus on grow something, maybe it still need a lot of time to make the China market in a very, very mutual level. So already make a lot of efforts of it. And for example, I still remember 2 years ago, a friend from Twitter asked me, maybe if there is any leading Chinese athletes, you can invite them to join the Twitter or Instagram to have their official accounts. I almost asked every top level of Chinese athletes. The answer is quite easy. I don't have time. Maybe by now, not yet. If I have more time, I will put a lot more effort on my Weibo account, or my Douyin account, instead of this international account.
I guess it's more a function of the fact that the Danish star believes that his higher profile in a market where the sport is popular and is large, that's the...
I think it's still where the money lies, right?
Yeah.
The opportunity of making income from rod versus what you do, and the amount of work you got to put in. There are not a lot of Linas and Yao Ming who can go out there and speak internationally, fluently. Yeah. So for a lot of these athletes, they struggle at times in front of international media. It's not easy to deal with a complete different culture.
Yeah.
When a lot of these athletes goes out, they tend to have a big entourage, not just from individual athletes, but even the teams. The Chinese federations tend to be it's
a bubble. Yeah.
Very, very, very closely protecting them. And at the end of the day, I worked with many athletes during my days with Adidas. A lot of times, some of these footballers, they could sign for J League or K League.
Yeah.
But then you look at the salary.
A bit different.
It's like, why? Yeah.
Owen?
Well, as a reflection of this, I just wanted to helicopter out into a slightly more commercial look at China. Our three major brand partners, amongst many, are HSBC, Total Oil, and Yonex, and indeed for the finals, Li Ning. A core focus of the relationship between HSBC, Total, and the BWF is China, without any question, and the numbers speak for themselves. I could quote all sorts of conversations I've had about HSBC and their business in China particularly, but they're with us on a global basis, but with a focus on China, because of how important that market is from a consumption point of view, a perception point of view, a brand building point of view. Yonex, of course, will do anything to take chunks out of Li Ning and vice versa. That's the rivalry in the equipment world.
That's good for you as a federation.
It's great for us as a federation. And players absolutely, fans absolutely, but our commercial considerations are considerable for China.
Get it. Okay. So I think let's move the conversation, flip it on its head. So in terms of Chinese exports, a lot of time we've been saying about federations going in. Let's talk about ByteDance. Talk me through ByteDance. Talk me through ByteDance, which at an aggregated level has been downloaded more in the last 12 months than all the other FANGs put together in the Western world. What's going on? What's your take? What's going on? Where's it come from? I'll start with you, Oscar, and then go all the way
This
around.
is the only guy who knows what we're talking about.
No, I'm trying to be polite here. Okay? So...
I think maybe I'm the one who knows the ByteDance most. Is not only maybe I'm the target audience of ByteDance products, it's also his ByteDance just invested into Hupu Group in 1.3 billion RMB a couple months before. So actually ByteDance, I would say, is a social media platform, although the first product, Total, is more like a loose fitting product, but they still very focusing on the social media engaging with people. The algorithm is very strong to connect every people, to push every news you want to watch come together. And also Douyin and TikTok, which is also the short videos format of their platforms.
Yeah.
So I think it's also doing very great because, for example, every quarter I will have the quarterly review with my clients from NFL, from European Football Cups, from some other brands. We will say, okay, what is the fast-growing social media platforms right now in China? I say the same products for almost 4 or 5 same quarters. Always Douyin, and Douyin still very, very fast growing right now. It's unstoppable because it's the format, short video, it meets the feast of our daily life right now, and also the algorithm is becoming, the AI right now is so great, yeah.
Would either of you like to hazard a explanation about ByteDance's success outside of China?
It's a little bit like Skynet became self-aware on the 14th of the Terminator line. I mean, the technology is phenomenal, and what's coming out of China, and we've had lots and lots of conversations here in the last 3 days about what's happening in the digital space. We can't ignore what's happening in China. It's a unique universe that will transfer into the rest of the world in the same way that technology developed in Europe, America, and elsewhere is being reflected globally. Can't be ignored.
Mark?
I think for example, like we 2 years ago, 3 years ago, your engagement, your platform of engagement, the platform of choice probably is going to be the Weibo and the WeChat. Yeah. And now, obviously, with the Douyin or TikTok, it's gained so much strength. And as Oscar says, it's the consumption pattern or the consumption habits of people, whether it's a sports game or just these videos, small videos. That makes it so much easier to read, to watch on the subway, on the bus, even just waiting in line for something, and that's why for us, for example, as a tennis event, we do try to engage a little bit more with WTA and say, hey, we really got to make something with the players on these other platforms. Because we have to work on them. As an event, it's not as easy to engage yourself. You need some faces, and those faces need to be players, and that's where we're trying to push a little bit. And WTA is aware of it. I mean, they have a very strong digital team in China as well. So, for us, the challenge is that we don't know the top 8 until probably another 3 weeks. So it's very hard to engage early videos of your last 8 or the top 8 singles players and doubles players. Until then,
Let's go left of field. I'm just conscious of time. Let's go left of field. A lot of innovation in retail in China is being very technology-driven. Facial recognition, automatic checkout, that kind of stuff. Where do you see that coming into the stadium experience within your events in China? And or do you see that potentially as an export into stadium experiences outside of China as well? Blue Sky's question.
I think it's a great question. I actually have a meeting tomorrow morning in Kuala Lumpur that I'm very much looking forward to, which is exactly how do you collect specific data about consumer behavior in venues? How does that work? How does the technology work? And how does that become very real currency in every sense of it? In terms of our relationships with our commercial partners, both broadcasters and sponsors. Not all venues are the same. We run a tour of events in the BWF World Tour across 27 different venues, from the lowest level of technology at the venue to the super highest. And it's very difficult then to apply that based on what's happening in every country. But it's a journey we have to go on, without doubt.
Matt?
Yeah, we're also going through the same journey, but I think it was mentioned before about WeChat. In China, if you don't have WeChat, you're dead. So you can do everything from finding out there's an event going on, to buying a ticket, to buying merchandise, to paying for your taxi to get there, and then buying your hot dog at the stadium. So just that holistic event experience through one app, and you can imagine the data that WeChat's getting from that. So we're also going through the same experience with a few different companies to see how we can be putting this holistic experience for our fans, and in terms of buying tickets and engaging them at the venue, and then playing games with a sport presentation and giving out a prize, and then just knowing more about your fans. And it comes back to what you asked before, of how to change your passive fan into an actual fan. And this is a fantastic way to get them from go to woe on one platform and then be monetizing them as much as possible. And for sure, China's doing this the best through WeChat and some other apps that are already out there.
Okay.
No, I'm just I was going to add, I mean, this past half a year, I've been working a lot on, for example, on the ticketing side of the competition, and the way that data can be mined these days through the WeChat and some of the services that they provide, to the extent of our ticket agency offering us do you want an old ticket or do you want facial recognition to go in? So that's the kind of things where it really, in a way, it's way advanced to many places, but at the same time, it could be scary. So this is the kind of things where, when it comes to China, what as a norm, when it comes to the Western world, sometimes it's what about privacy issues, and many issues are brought about that comes through. So this is going to be, I think, the debate is going to go on for the near future.
Fascinating. Okay, so we sort of had a bit of a futuristic view, retail, facial recognition, that kind of stuff. What's next? Obviously, ByteDance, all these waves come obviously unannounced, and you adapt to it. But from an event perspective, if I was to sort of say, what is your in-stadia, what is the vision of your in-stadia experience in year 5 of a 10-year conversation? How do you sort of approach that? How do you actually approach planning for that, thinking of that, talking about it?
I mean, within it's about fan experience, right? What we do, so what we really want to make sure is that, but from the time they learn about sort of the first moment of truth, of touching them,
discovery,
all the way to within Stadia. So with the social media platform and the WeChat, etc., it helps a lot. The engagement of it, via sort of the TikTok or the Douyin, that goes through a lot of that engagement cycle. For us to deliver a message for potential and existing ticket holders would be a lot different now, because we got so much more content that we can give them. When you come into the Stadia, I mean, now we sat in a meeting with the sort of opening ceremony, sort of the planners, and they were saying there's all the interactive stuff they could do with a shake of the phone, or with Bluetooth and all these technologies. And I'm sure that I'm talking about old technologies here. Yeah. I'm not your latest tech guy, but there's so much stuff that they present to us that could be done, which is fascinating as an experience for a fan. You could actually be quite involved in that event, aside from the tennis. So I think this is something that I think more and more you get a lot more experiential stuff, where you're on a concourse, sit in a seat, buying a hot dog or a beer, etc. Yeah.
Home, the transport to the location. I'm just going to come to the last bit. Any questions or comments from the audience before I sort of begin to dive into the last bits at all? Okay. Let's look forward. Again, let me start from you. A new rights tender coming out in 21. What does future state look like? Let's look at 2025. What does future state look like for you? Give us an example of new definitions of success, either for you as a federation or an event promoter, or for your commercial partners.
I think every IP or rights holder wants more fans. So we want to be growing all our social platforms, but more importantly to us, we want to be growing our fan data. So we want to be knowing more about our fans, their habits, their spending habits, and that will tell us the best way to be monetizing them, and then making money from our fans. So at the moment, ITTF's quite weak at collecting this fan data, and that's definitely one of our priorities going forward. So if we're talking about 25, I would love to be able to tell you that now we've got a database of 5-10 million Chinese fans. This is their spending habits. This is their consumption habits through table tennis, their favorite player, their merchandise spend, their watching habits on our OTT platform, something much more sophisticated. And then I can be going to a brand and saying, what do you want to achieve in China? It's great you want to be in China, but are you looking for what age category, millennials, Gen X, Gen Y? Are you trying to sell them flights? Are you trying to sell them mortgages? And for us to have more sophisticated data that we can actually go we can help you.
So very much, if I was to summarize it, very much a retail-oriented model in terms of connecting content to commerce, not necessarily awareness intent purchase, just awareness, boom, into content. Social commerce was the phrase Tencent used yesterday, and go from there. Okay, almost like an AirAsia, but that kind of thing.
Yeah, not dissimilar. I mean, our rights, as everybody knows, are committed to in-front sports and media until 2025.
Yeah.
We were one of few federations to do an 8-year cycle as opposed to a 4-year cycle, just in terms of how deep we can go with that. We are clearly looking at commercial relationships all the time, renewing, finding new partners, those that have the capacity for it. But I think it goes back to the previous conversation for us. Fan engagement and the fan experience has to be better. The venues we are in are fantastic hosts, they're really good, but the levels of ability to engage with our fans are very different between those. I think that needs to improve. And in the same way that we can learn from what's happening in China, I do believe that in the USA, the fan experience in most sports is an incredible experience. It's a day of entertainment, not just sport. How do we emulate that? Player journey. For us, it's, with our quite old-fashioned way in which the players are managed by the in-country federations and not necessarily agents. What do we do to improve the journey for the player, not just in terms of their career progression, but their experience of the BWF and what it does for them? So in event facilities.
From player or an athlete? So you're saying player,
athletes.
Somebody who participates, or somebody who competes?
Competes.
More than competes, okay.
Competes.
Right.
What is their journey through our ecosystem? How good is it? Are we looking after them properly? I think that's essential. And then the final point I wanted to make is that we have some data from our good friends at Nielsen Sports that suggests that we have 750 million fans worldwide. We define those as people who are actively involved in the sport at a very amateur level. And I would, by 2025, hope that that number's closer to 1 billion.
So that's fascinating. If I was to compare, what you're fundamentally saying is fans as customers, and then insight about them. What you're saying is almost athletes and as competitors, and then insight about them. So you're looking at demand side, you're looking at supply side. Fascinating. Mark?
I mean, being the sort of commercial officer or the money guy, in the foreseeable future, in an event, for a major event in China, the majority of the income is still going to be from sponsorship. Be it the public sector or the private sector. You literally, with the sort of the media environment in China, you get not a lot of media money coming through. Your merchandise and your ticketing would still stay at a much lower level than your sponsorship. So it's really about, okay, what can you do to make your event sexier for a sponsor or especially the government? Because a lot of the sort of the commercial, quote unquote commercial player are state-owned companies. They tend to be very much close to home to the city. We have been lucky enough to, aside from state-owned in Shenzhen, we still have a Huawei, we have the DJIs, we have a couple of banks who are privately owned or shares public companies. So, but at the end of the day, it's really about how to get that majority lion's share of the revenue. Those guys interested about your event, and is it just the marketing guy, or is it the one up top, or is it the vice mayor?
Could you unpack that a bit more talk about the how? You've spoken about the who and the what. So what would it take additionally or differently to what you're doing now to increase the account sizes or the sponsorship share of total?
I mean, for us right now, in China, we were talking about how to satisfy the current policies of what's going on, right? The Greater Bay Area, Shenzhen is a city, obviously has great ambitions to be the leading city of the Greater Bay Area. So how can our event help make the Greater Bay Area look better? How can we put them as a better, well-known city like Beijing and Shanghai onto the global map? How can we get some global brands coming in to come in? And we're very blessed that the first edition, Shiseido is a global cosmetic company that has come in. So via Shiseido, we're also doing a lot more things with them, with Dentsu, to make sure that the event is not just well received in China, but also abroad.
So just as you would sort of align a brand strategy, here you're aligning a government strategy from a policy level, and then finding a pathway through sponsorship to actually amplify the messaging.
I think if you are doing a major event in China, you don't align yourself with the public policy. You are down a very, very dark path.
Okay, let's move on quickly. Oscar, the last word. What do you expect your clients, especially those who are coming from outside China, or even those from within China going outside, how will your business look different in 3 to 5 years' time? What are the new kinds of services, new areas that you want to go into?
I think right now will be a very important or sensitive moment right now for these overseas right holders coming to China or the internal China sport marketing things. As Chinese company, if you imagine the biggest or most successful Chinese company like WeChat, like Tencent, like Alibaba, they start from a small piece of their hardcore work, but they gradually become another things. So I think because the competitive in the China market is more difficult than the past 5 or 10 years, I think it's just the same. So the best company, they really start from what is the core competitive in China market, and they have to transfer from themselves. For example, just like our mother company, Hupu, we just start from a sport forum, and then we become a sport media. When we become the biggest sport media, one of the biggest sport media in China, we decide to step further. We right now have investment funding, invest many famous Chinese sport company right now. We develop our own IP called King of Underdogs, which is one-on-one basketball competition right now, which is standing number 2 steadily just behind CBA. And also, we have our e-commerce platforms called Shihuo and Poison. And even these Poison apps right now have bigger DAU or a bigger market value than our original Hupu, and also things like that. But for sure, you have your core competitive or DNA as Hupu as the case, which is we understand the users, we understand the fans, and we believe in technology.
Beautiful. So you sort of go from a technology-based services company to developing IPs and platforms to eventually investment as well.
Yeah, that's true. So maybe, for example, many right holders coming into China, first of all, maybe you just deliver your games in TV. Right now, you deliver also digital communication with the fans. So maybe next step, what from this format, from this game, what can we deliver extra?
Excellent. All right. On that positive note, I give you Oscar, Marcus, Owen, and Matt. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.